Welcome to Take Off Your Shoes. My name is Reverend Marie Duquette. I'm an ordained minister in the Lutheran tradition, and I believe that where my story, your story, and God's story meet, there is holy ground. The Holy Gospel according to Matthew, the 3rd chapter. Then Jesus came from Galilee to John at the Jordan to be baptized by him. John would have prevented him, saying, "I need to be baptized by you, and do you come to me?" But Jesus answered him, "Let it be so now, for it is proper for us in this way to fulfill all righteousness." Then he consented. And when Jesus had been baptized, just as he came up from the water, suddenly the heavens were opened to him, and he saw God's Spirit descending like a dove and alighting on him. And a voice from the heavens said, "This is my Son, the beloved, with whom I am well pleased." It's the gospel of the Lord. Please be seated. I know that you each bring into this sanctuary your hopes, your joys, your dreams, but also your worries and pain, your fears, your grief. And I pray that the experience of worship itself might be a balm to your body, mind, and spirit. May the meditations of my heart and the words of my lips be acceptable in your sight, good Lord. I need to ask you today to perhaps be willing to add to your burden by reflecting with me on the news this week and finding its connection to the words of the prophet Isaiah in the Gospel of Matthew. Because something distinctive happened in our country this week. A veil has been torn back. People who have been blind are now seeing. And once you regain your sight, it is nearly impossible to look away. What you have is a change of perspective. What you have is an epiphany. Let's begin with a brief history review. Christopher Columbus was not the first foreign explorer to land in the Americas. We know this. Indigenous peoples have populated the Western Hemisphere for tens of thousands of years. When Europeans, led by Christopher Columbus, landed here, the result was a devastating loss of life, disruption of tradition, an enormous loss of lands for indigenous peoples in the Americas. It is estimated that in the 130 years following first contact, Native America lost 95% of its population. We were told this was inevitable, necessary even. We were told the Native Americans were savages, and their forced relocation and suffering was justified. Between 1501 and 1867, nearly 13 million African people were kidnapped, forced onto European and American ships, and trafficked across the Atlantic Ocean to be enslaved, abused, and forever separated from their homes, families, and cultures. We wrote into our Constitution that a Black person was only worth 3/5 of a person. And the Fugitive Slave Clause protected slavery and delayed its ban. Shortly after the 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor, the U.S. government forcibly relocated more than 100,000 people of Japanese heritage from their homes along the West Coast. They were sent to internment camps to live in dirt floor huts without privacy, adequate food, or health care. 32 people died in ICE custody in 2025, making ICE the agency's deadliest year in more than 2 decades. Some of those who died in detention had arrived in the U.S. recently, seeking asylum. Others had arrived years ago, some as young children. Some had been apprehended on criminal charges or had served time for convictions. Others had been picked up in the wide-sweeping ICE raids of people who had been contributing members of our society for generations. State-owned media reports that these are savage people, drug dealers, gang members, only here to harm the people, culture, and economy of the United States. this weekend. Renee Nicole Good was killed by ICE at 9:37 in the morning after dropping her 6-year-old son off at school. The story that she was following ICE around all day is a complete fabrication. And even if she were, what justification would that have been for brutally killing her? Good was certainly not the first person to be murdered by ICE, but she seems to be the one that got the nation's attention, such that spontaneous protests erupted and continue today across our country. It is as if people who had been blind to the violence enacted on its own citizens by those in power suddenly could see more clearly, oh, history is repeating itself. The ICE presence is so huge in Minneapolis and throughout Minnesota that people are being harassed at work, school, hospitals, daycares, and playgrounds. All schools in Minneapolis are closed for a month because ICE was physically assaulting the students when school let out. They waited in the parking lots around the Mayo Clinic for workers to finish their shifts. Some think those being detained should just cooperate and they won't get hurt. Many have cooperated only to find themselves sent to one of the 200 detention centers in the United States, at least one of them the same as the camps where the Japanese were sent. Just do what they say and you won't get hurt is something you tell hostages, not free people. We can do this the easy way or the hard way is something you tell prisoners, not free people. Do what I say or suffer the consequences is something survivors of domestic violence hear repeatedly when they are blamed for the violence enacted upon them. These examples, difficult as they are to hear, describe the way our neighbors are being treated, and not just in Minnesota, but throughout this country, including in the state of New York. Holding all I have said so far over here, now let's think about today's gospel, which is about Jesus' baptism. This is the first time we see Jesus as an adult. Now consider all the people who made it possible for Jesus to arrive at this point, including his beloved cousin John the Baptist, who literally cleared the way for Jesus' arrival. Jesus would not have made it to adulthood, much less his baptism, without individuals and communities who were committed to listening to God and protecting the vulnerable, even at great risk to themselves, loving their neighbors. 50% of children at that time died before they reached the age of 10. Disease, poverty, infanticide, war, and malnutrition all threatened children growing to adulthood when Jesus walked the earth. And we know that one of the first things Jesus did when he was born was to escape to Egypt with his family because King Herod was raining down terror on families with young boys. This moment in time points to Jesus beginning his life on earth as a refugee. When Jesus was falsely arrested, unjustly tried, and crucified, it was for the crime of being called King of the Jews, precipitated by the crimes of healing on the Sabbath and turning the tables of those who preyed on the poor in the name of God. Jesus' baptism, just as ours, was surrounded by community. It reminds us of all the people who have helped us make it this far in life, those who introduced us to the faith and those who bravely practiced theirs, teaching us how to do the same. In Jesus' life, there's Mary and Joseph, who reminds us of the many family members, including the family we were born into, but also the family we choose. Those who have shown themselves to be committed to the safety and support of the most vulnerable. Think of how good it feels when you enter into something frightening, be it surgery or grief or a move to an unfamiliar area, when those who surround you say, "You got this. You can do this. I'm right here. I'm with you." The Magi highlight the protection of and care for Jesus provided by broader society. The Magi are unknown to Mary and Joseph. Nevertheless, these wise strangers protect and celebrate their child. The Magi ignore Herod's request and evade him on their return home, refusing to share Jesus' location with him, even though doing so made them targets for retribution if they were ever found. They understand the dangers of disobeying the king, but choose to do what they can to honor this child and ensure his ability to grow into his role as the Son of God. When we think of Jesus' baptism, we have to remember that many people who aided in getting him to the Jordan River that day, despite the threat of state-sanctioned violence and the culture expectation to obey, rather than challenge an unjust system. In this time, when children are being violently separated from their parents over immigration, schools are being closed due to the threat of students being assaulted and disappeared by ICE, let us remember the way our baptism changes us from within. Theologians say it this way: in our baptism, we die and are born again. We rise anew into a life we do not live for ourselves, but for others. It is tied to John, the 15th chapter, the 13th verse, which says, "No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." And the rock star Patti Smith, who has lost many people tragically, recently said to Anderson Cooper when discussing her grief, "When it comes to grief, you can either drown in it or be cleansed by it." The grief that I have named from our history and still today, we can either drown in or be cleansed by it and rise anew to go another way. In the days and weeks to come, we will each find different ways to support those being persecuted unjustly. And when we do, I urge you to hold fast to this truth. Any risks that you take, whatever sacrifices you make, you are allowing yourself to be guided and encouraged by God's own Spirit. It's easy to think right now, things have never been this bad in our country. I would add to that, we have never been so close to changing systems in this country so that all people are valued, protected, and supported the way Jesus modeled when he walked among us. I am reminded of the words of Harriet Tubman when she was moving all those people enslaved to freedom. And her mantra was, if you hear the dogs, keep going. If you fall down, keep going. If you are frightened, keep going. Keep going. And the result was she got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people to freedom. In the words of James Baldwin, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. As we strive together to protect and gather all of God's beloved community, let us pray without ceasing. From today's Psalm 29, verse 11, O Lord, give strength to your people. Give them, O Lord, the blessings of peace.